maybe we could make it more efficient and streamlined. But I think the principals have a great deal of autonomy in executing their job. What the principals don't have at their disposal, generally across the system, is a great deal of resources. So I think it is the resources that impact upon their ability to act, rather than the authority not being able to, rather than not having the authority to act. And I think as well that the leadership at the middle management level sometimes places a barrier to action on the part of the principals. So sometimes, we get these complaints of the education officers restricting the action of the principals, and that will be corrected from the very top. So we've put in place now a chief education officer who we believe has a more business-like approach to managing on the ground, and that will filter through to the education officer corps. So I think principals will get more encouragement, more support in taking on innovative approaches to managing the problems and finding solutions to the problems that they face at the local level. In terms of just generally, as you have said, Maxine, that we have to focus and agree on the big issue. And the big issue is whether or not our education system will infuse accountability at all levels as a priority. I think we have largely, and based upon the statement made by Hopeton, that the accountability notion seems more palatable today than it seemed a year ago. that's a major statement, and because the truth is, Hopeton, that we have had to revise our thinking on accountability to acknowledge the difficulties that the agents in the field would face once you start to hold them accountable. So yes, you're right, it is a more reasoned approach that we are advocating now. But I want to just close off by saying that accountability applied on the negative side, that is when we have to take action, will always lead to conflict. There will always be persons who disagree. So it is very important that we who are leaders in the education system agree of the importance of accountability and form a bond that won't be broken by resistance and conflict. And, you know, because it is going to be resisted when we start to act. And one thing I'd want to convey here is to say that I am totally committed and resolved to effecting sanctions when they are necessary to ensure that accountability is not just spoken of, but there is action towards accountability. And those are the comments and responses that I would like to give now.
When is it that the Education Act of 1980, which is quite outdated and which raises an albatross around the principal's necks, will be changed and be adjusted to allow us this autonomy that we are now speaking of?
Last week at a meeting with the JTA, I outlined to them that they should now start considering what shape the laws governing education in Jamaica would take. We have grown accustomed to having one act, an Education Act. But the way in which the transformation is evolving, it would appear that we will not have one Education Act anymore. And there will be a body of law spread over several pieces of legislation that will govern education. I think it will probably make it more difficult for the education manager in terms of coming to grips with all the laws that are required, but certainly that is not a problem that cannot be overcome with a proper information management system. So you're going to find pieces of legislation governing the licensing and registration of teachers, the professional standards of teachers. You're going to find legislation governing inspection of schools, standards for schools. You're going to find legislation covering special measures that should be taken. Well, let me just back up on that one. You're going to find legislation introducing the concept of failing schools. And as a result of that, action that could be taken to rescue a school from failure. You're going to find legislation governing examinations, national examinations. You're going to find legislation governing the participation of parents in education. You're going to find legislation regarding the safety and security of the school and defining the school as a safe zone. And then other areas will be covered by either regulation or policy. So that's, you will find, that's, as of now, that's the view as to what will happen with the Education Act. Already, we have given drafting instructions for the Jamaica Teaching Council. So within another year or so, there will be a piece of legislation dealing with teachers. The National Education Inspectorate will be operated under the Executive Agency Act, but the School Improvement Act will be another piece of legislation which will come within a year or so. The safety and security legislation regarding schools, that is the Safe Schools Act, that is being presented to Cabinet early next year for approval of drafting instructions. So there is a raft of legislation coming that will, in effect, as they are passed, repeal aspects of the existing act. And so you will be having a body of legislation governing education.
Okay. One of my concerns about our system is a disjointedness, beginning from early childhood going up to tertiary. And I have asked at various forums, how is this being addressed by the ministry? We have a situation, for instance, where students who are leaving school at age 15 cannot work, cannot go to college, they're too young, parents do not have money to send them to private institutions, and they're simply out there floundering somewhere. I am yet to hear about how this gap is being addressed. I'm told about a 2-year added on to the high school years, but I'm just hearing talk about this.